Good to meet you, babe. Now we have an awesome action-packed show for you, but first we gotta get the hard stuff out of the way because, unfortunately, man, we're gonna start off with some bad news. We
Yeah.
talked extensively last year about the trial of Superfly wrestling
Jimmy Snuka,
superstar.
yeah.
Superfly Jimmy Snuka, yeah. The
Yeah, we
story
talked
is-
about it a while. I know you broke it down for us and everything like that.
Yeah,
So,
the whole thing is Hall of Fame wrestler Superfly Jimmy Snuka, idol of mine and Adam's.
Yes.
You know, bane of Derek's existence because he couldn't
Yes.
quite get that one move down correctly.
You couldn't
knew it,
quite
you know.
spread it out
was
the way you
coming for
wanted
my
to.
neck.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
talk-
like
talk
just
Jeff
champion
about
of the top
ethnicity and,
rope,
you
basically.
know, wrestling.
Basically.
That brown people actually can. I'm kidding.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
You're not
No,
wrong.
The
but-
story, the story is though that a 32-year-old cold case was reopened involving the death of his ex-girlfriend back in 1983, 84.
yeah, something like
back
that.
in
right.
the early to mid 80s, and this was a long time thought to be a accidental death situation where Snuka was just in the house. He was just there.
We're just there, yeah. And
And,
then it became he was maybe involved in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Her family pushed for them to reopen the case with new forensic technology available to us, and they ran like the CSI, semen kid under the lampshade or whatever
Yeah.
they do, and they found that evidence pointed to him actually being responsible for her death.
Yeah, so this was an ongoing investigation for a while.
Yeah, this was raw. Dude.
And then just a few weeks ago, it was a closed case.
Mhm.
They were done, and then he passed away just days after,
Yeah,
right?
well, that ties
And that's
into
how
the
it was.
death.
It wasn't. Did
Well-
they close it out and then he passed away, or
Well,
was
they
it
closed
like,
it out because they deemed him mentally unfit to
Right,
remain in
okay.
prison. So he's
Yeah.
been in prison since back then to now. Well,
Okay.
about 12 days.
Yeah.
And he's actually been hospitalized right after that. So he
For
wasn't in good
dementia,
health.
yeah, it was.
Yeah,
what it
people
was.
don't know that
That's
he was.
gotta be nuts being in prison with dementia.
Mhm.
All right.
Well, I don't know, man.
I mean-
we don't know. We don't know how that was. He could have been. He
Forget
could have been in
what the
Disneyland every day. Could've been like, doing salvia, just like me. It's like me.
But
and
the
my,
thing is,
no,
like,
he
I
was-
remember
he was-
hearing it, and I was
An
like,
infinite
God,
loop of
damn,
his
that's
high-fly
crazy.
move.
You know what I mean? That's a serious case. You know what I
No,
mean?
that's
And that's
screwed
a
up,
that's a
man.
serious story. You know what I mean? And like
Well,
he
all
was
I can hope is that
he was proved incompetent to be in court and all that stuff, and
Yo,
incompetent
how messed
to.
up is that though? That's the reason they released you from prison because
Right.
you're not mentally.
I'm pretty sure that
You're not mentally
reopening
prepared
the cold
to.
case didn't help the situation at all. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
yeah.
gotta wonder about his mental health back then. We're talking
Yeah.
about just a year ago,
Yeah.
Right.
and they put him in jail, and then a year later.
Well,
they're like,
immediately
you
you
know what,
think
you're
of
not
like other cases. You know what I mean? Like I obviously the first thing I thought about was like Chris Benoit and everything
Oh
like
my
that,
gosh.
and his case and the murdering of his family and things like that. And you thought of like his finishing move was like off the top rope, just slamming his head into the thing.
Yeah, people
Yeah.
go on
And then
for
you
years.
and you
It's
think
like,
about it, you're like the cause of like brain injuries and concussions and things like that. So it's serious stuff and serious things have happened. You know what
What
I mean?
a thing to be an occupational hazard, but
Right.
head trauma.
Head trauma, yeah. So like Jimmy Fly,
it's them
Superfly
and
Jimmy
the,
Snuka
and,
was.
the, and the Slayer and the Captain Slayer, man. You know what I mean?
Right.
You gotta sign those insurance. policies so they know ahead of time.
This stuff happens, man. It's crazy though.
They could make him wear helmets. Like Dale Earnhardt Jr. could have been a pioneer, not just for NASCAR, but for wrestling as well. And
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna buy tickets. when
If
these
only
cats-
he didn't. Yeah.
They step
exactly.
into the ring and then strap in their bicycle helmets. I'm like, that's not how. No, that's a little different.
Yeah, no, it's
Undertaker
crazy,
has
man.
one with, like,
That's
shaped
crazy.
like the hat.
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
All
Yeah,
right. No, actually,
Diecast
ironically enough, as a dude who used to ride the Harley down the ramp into the ring,
Yeah.
you think of anyone who'd be an advocate for like head trauma and like dome safety?
Right.
Like they wouldn't. No, never mind, because his character was the dead man. So maybe
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
in
lives.
life I should have worn my helmet.
But
now.
anyways, like everything's kind of catching up, and you're like, what you did for the last 30 years is probably not the best thing for you.
Yeah.
By
well, I
the
mean,
way,
it's
you
like,
know what I mean?
You have to
It's-
dedicate your lives to this man.
To,
Right.
to bring a good point to it, I mean, it's like a very small light point to it. It's like the average wrestlers, if you notice, have died at like 40, 50, I guess because of occupational hazard. But
Right.
he was lucky enough to make it to 73. Some of these guys don't even
Jesus,
make
yeah,
it
when
to
you think about it.
45, bro.
Yeah, made
It's
it with
sad,
only
man.
stomach cancer and
Yeah.
Alzheimer's.
trying to give a good outlook,
and,
you know?
No, I feel you, man. I know. I do understand that he did make it much longer than a lot
Yeah.
of professional athletes.
Plus,
do.
his daughter's wrestling too, so
And his daughter's carrying on the legacy.
Yeah.
So God willing, she'll actually be able to maintain, have a illustrious career, and
Hopefully.
stay in a relatively good health.
Right.
The story we're talking about, if you haven't caught on, if you're not a fan or anything, one of the original wrestling superstars, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, one of the old school cats, who really paved the way for
Yeah.
high flying tactical wrestlers and for minority wrestlers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
this wasn't all like Killer Kowalski, Gorilla Monsoon, and Bobby Brain Heenan. They're not bad guys, but they're like the poster boys for Aryan sports. And Superfly Jimmy Snuka was one of the first ethnic dudes to really make it big. He was Polynesian.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, dude. Okay, so the story actually is he was in prison. They let him out of prison, and 12 days later he passed of complications from dementia, from his illness. So he left behind a legacy on the Facebook, on the Twitter feed.
Well, Rowdy
It was
Piper
all-
too. You know what I mean? Like that. He was involved for a long time. You know what I mean? He didn't think he was going to make it past the 60 as well.
Yeah,
And he said it as much as well. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to make it this long. You know what I mean? I've suffered enough injuries. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
they
it's like these
believe,
old
but-
wrestlers and these old people. There's like they've been battling for this long. That's just that's the reality they come to face at this point in life. You know. So you know what I mean?
Did any of you get a chance to see Superfly wrestle?
Yeah,
yes,
man. Come on.
absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
okay, dude.
off the
this
top
is-
rope,
this is a
man,
talk
like that.
show.
Like
We
I'm saying,
talk,
like
all right?
like I said, off the top rope, there's no one dangerous. You know what I mean? Like that, and just that spread eagle swan dive he did off the top rope
His
is
airtime
something we
was
still
impeccable.
talk about,
Mhm.
and it's
airtime,
crazy, but it's
A lot of
You know what I
cats
mean?
credit that move to both Rob Van Dam and Flying Brian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Both wrestlers
right.
from the '90s era. They don't acknowledge that this came from like the '80s. This is old stuff.
This is this
Superfly
dude,
was
yeah, right.
doing
And he
this
used to
back when
wrestle
those cats-
barefoot too. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that was a gimmick I could never really get behind. I'm like, yo,
Ah, it was
gonna
awesome.
what if I'm in the ring with this dude?
Kind of
Doc?
sold the Polynesian.
yeah, exactly. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but
But
so did Yokozuna. That's not always a pretty thing. This dude's walking all day on them bare feet. too.
Yeah, I
He
like how
comes
they
in-
sold the Samoan as the Asian,
Yeah.
Japanese.
Yeah, gonna catch you in the side of the face with that bare foot. Like,
no, he
"Whoosh!"
definitely he was definitely like the daredevil of his time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it was it was that time you were just trying to get an audience,
Mhm.
and then literally you thought about like the consequences of what you're doing. But
Well, I do
you know what I
appreciate
mean?
that
Now
the family. Oh,
you
sorry.
know. I'm just saying, like we're thinking about it, you know what I mean? And it was like a little bit too late, perhaps, about
Well, at the very least,
what happened.
I look at it as we can look at it as this is a man who had a storied career and then post career had kind of a tumultuous life, but he left behind a good legacy. In his
Right.
time, he was a pioneer for minority wrestlers. A lot of people were able to break through.
Yeah,
The most popular wrestler in the world now is a man who is of Polynesian descent. You know what I'm saying? He's not Hulk Hogan. He's not Macho Man. These were awesome dudes. He's not The Undertaker. He didn't have like this wild gimmick. He was.
Yeah.
I'm talking, of course, about Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
right.
Who
Yeah.
did who was the official, the one who officially released the statement of Snooker's death. The family
Yeah.
asked him specifically to do it,
Yeah.
and he was a fan, he was a friend, and he was
Right, I think he's
one
kind
of the ones
of
that
become the
benefited from-
face of like wrestling, anyways, and like releasing this sort of information. But
better him than the Boogeyman
yeah,
or Goldust. Or,
perhaps, yeah, you know what I mean. He was big.
I do like when Macho Man was the epitome of professional wrestling, because that's an image. you
Did
can't
he
really
sleep
get
with
by.
Stephanie though?
Damn,
Is that
son.
is that
It's
is
like
that
a
what
whole
happened?
nother
You know
show.
what I mean?
I'm
There's-
gonna
yeah,
assume
it
the
is, right?
generational gap prevented that.
Right.
I'm gonna
Right,
hope
right.
the generational gap prevented that. That's like, okay, great grandpa, stick it
You're
in,
hoping
like,
that, yeah, no one brings that up here when
all
we're
right,
talking
we
about.
officially made this the most respectful obituary we've given on the show.
Right.
All
But
right, so-
yeah, who knows? You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. He was big, but he had a checkered past as well. So who knows what happens? You
And
know?
people have demons, but hopefully, you can put them all to rest now.
All right.
Superstar Superfly Jimmy Snuka, wrestling superstar. Rest in peace, sir.
And if you didn't try to do this over your bunk bed, then you were doing it wrong when you were a kid. You know what I
Seriously.
mean? Like everyone tried to be Jimmy Superfly Snuka. You know
I
what
got
I
a
mean? Like,
concussion.
everyone tried to swan dive off the upper bunk. You know
And
what
a
I
bunch
mean?
of friends who
So
set up
respect to
matches
him,
and,
absolutely. I was a big fan. I was a kid. Absolutely.